Okay, thanks again for coming today and coming to listen to me speak about our project Ecosphere. Uh, I don't know if any of you were here 6 months ago when we first mooted this idea in the last workshop on climate governance for the National Climate Dashboard, but we've come some ways since then, and we've moved on to building out this project. Okay, so just in summary, what are we trying to do? We are trying to crowdsource climate data. Why? Because we see a big gap in the ability to collect data from various agencies. Either it's in silos, either it's not collected in a very granular way, and therefore we can't use that data to create actionable insights. And this is where we see the problem. And what we are trying to do is to bring private sector into the equation and help and ask them to collect the data for us and give them an incentivization model that makes it sustainable. So that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do, right? And what we also do, which is different from, is a bit more innovative in that sense, is we do it on Web3. And what we mean by Web3 is that it's blockchain based. Why blockchain? Because the data is then decentralized, not centralized. We're not going to be a Google that hoards the data and monetizes it that way. We are trying to make sure that that data is accessible even in the future. And it should be decentralized from the standpoint of it's immutable and trustable. So that's why the Web3 is important. The Web3 is also important for another reason, which is that we need to provide an incentivization model. And that incentivization model works on tokens. So, for example, if you own a node and send us data, we will validate that data. And based on the quality of that data that we receive, we will be awarding tokens to that node or that data provider. Now, those tokens will have a value based on how we sell that data to and monetize it. And when we monetize it and we are able to, say, for example, get funding from an insurance company who wants that data for their own risk modeling, for example, we can then buy back those tokens from those data providers. So that in that way, the data providers are incentivized to provide us good quality data in the long term. If we don't have that kind of model, if it's say a grant-based system or some other model like that, we don't feel it's going to be decentralized, one, and secondly, it's not going to be sustainable in the long term. So that in a nutshell is what our project is about and what we are trying to achieve. One other thing I'll mention here is that we're talking about climate data right now, but it could be any data. It could be GHG emissions. It could be water levels. For example, if we're trying to track flooding, this is what we're trying to do. Bit about me. I've been in enterprise applications for the last 25 years. I've been doing government systems, mainly centralized ones. But about a couple of years ago, we also built out some identity systems for students in Malaysia, foreign students to be exact. And we built that on a Web3 platform. Also, about 3 years ago, I joined climate governance as a volunteer. And that's where we started with this idea that we will build a national climate dashboard. And that climate dashboard was supposed to be so that whether it was stakeholders like government or municipal councils or even citizens, they would be able to use the data from that national climate dashboard to gain actionable insights on what to do. Unfortunately, what we learned over the last 2-3 years is there's not a lot of data around. So building the dashboards was not creating the goal or not achieving the goal of giving actionable insights. The data that we were able to get was maybe 2 years old. Now, 2 years old data is not going to help us make actionable insights. So now we've gone backwards. We've had to go back down, and that's where the whole rationale of coming up with this project was, because we need to get quality data at an almost real-time basis, right? Can I say? So December of last year, we designed the system. We entered a hackathon with Hedera. Hedera is a blockchain It's an enterprise-grade blockchain run by about 40 of the Fortune 500 companies, and a very low cost. If you know anything about cryptocurrencies and stuff, there's a lot of talk about how the gas fees are very expensive and stuff. In Hedera's case, they fix it at 1/10 of a cent, so that's why it's the enterprise grade. And we entered this hackathon. We came out in February and won the overall best prize for, the overall best prize, and also we won the sustainable and green finance category. So that's where we came out with this, and now the platform is ready, or thereabouts, we're working on building the devices. So back to the rationale, right? You don't have an early warning system. NADMA, for example, is not able, even though flooding happens every year, when you look at meteorological data, or what weather warnings we get heavy rain from in the afternoon tomorrow that will be from Penang, Kedah, Perak, Selangor, Malacca, Johor. How do we make any use of that data? And then when we get that insight, we just ignore it because, okay, it's rain tomorrow. That's as much as we can get value out of. What we need is much more granular data to be able to say that if there's heavy rain in a particular location, there's going to be flooding as well. Or that we have sensors in the river that tell us that the water level is rising at a certain rate, and therefore, guys, in the next 20 minutes, half an hour, please avoid those areas because there's a high risk of flooding. Now that is data that we can actually use to change behavior, to be able to avoid problems. That's what we want to get to. So that's I mean, you've also seen flooding in Spain, and that was also caused by that kind of lack of early warning system. So this is a big use case that we want to also work towards. I mentioned this already. This is the traditional way of getting data where, or the weather alerts that we currently get, which is not good enough. And the fact is that there is already a solution. IoT weather devices give us a much better, more granular way of collecting data, and we should exploit those that new technology. It's not, I mean, well, I say it's new, it's not that new. You could buy these weather devices from the last 10 years. But they were pretty much aimed at different group of people, but those same group of people can use it. For example, they were aimed at agricultural use cases, for example. Now, there's no reason that those use cases use it for their own purposes, cannot send that data back to us as well so that we can use it for other purposes. So that's where there's a good way of collaborating with people who are already using weather devices. This is what it looks like. Well, we call it Ways for Climate because it's a crowdsourcing aspect. But this is how it looks like. The weather device connects to a module. The module connects to the cloud where we have a smart app. Hedera is, how do I do that? Hedera is the blockchain. And then once we have that data, we can syndicate it out in all kinds of ways. The climate dashboard is one. The alerts could be another one if there's subscription. And again, APIs for third-party usage, enterprise usage. A bit more detail in terms of the diagram. This would be the weather nodes that could be anywhere. Again, this also could be even a global kind of initiative. It doesn't have to be only Malaysia, it could be on a global scale. And what we actually call, there's a name for this, it's called decentralized physical infrastructure. This is a big theme within the Web3 ecosystem, where there are different decentralized physical infrastructure. For example, another decentralized physical infrastructure would be something like compute power. You know, now GPUs are very expensive. So you can actually join a system where peer-to-peer people can use your GPU compute power on your laptop, and you can earn tokens from that. It's a similar sort of thing where decentralization allows for you to unlock resources that you have for the greater good of or for any other monetization aspect. From a sensor standpoint, these are the standard ones: air quality, barometer, wet bulb, wind direction. One of the famous ones is actually or one of the useful ones is actually a camera, right? The camera can look at the sky, see the clouds. Machine learning can look at those clouds and tell you what is the risk of rain, and based on the wind direction, it all can tell you whether, and another camera, say 2 kilometers away or 3 kilometers away, can say, oh, this site is going to become, it's going to rain in this site in the next 15 minutes because the other site is already raining. So things like that are really helpful to make actionable insights. Okay. Bit more in terms of the architecture. The data collection is coming from the, data collection is coming from the climate nodes, and they get rewards. The data visualization, and I'll show you a bit about this later when I show you the platform. Sharing through API integration. Now this is probably something new to most of you. It's called the interplanetary file system. It sounds fancy, but basically it's a decentralized database. So as I told you, we want to make it decentralized so that the data that we collect is stored in a way that it can be accessed by other people, whoever has been given permission to do it. And that's how we do it, because there's one part is the chain, which is this, and this is consensus in the sense that once it is time-stamped, it cannot be changed. And the other part is making sure you store the data. So there are two parts in a decentralized model. So yeah, we believe our proposition is unique because, crowdsourcing of data is not new, but the incentivization model that goes with that is new. And that's where we think that we have a unique proposition that has some legs and can be sustainable. Right? As I mentioned earlier, the Web3 part is because we need data integrity and trust, and that's a very important part. Okay. Now, the other part is that we need to maybe have, if we're going to sell the data, we need to have service level obligations with our customers. So, for example, if we sign up a client like, say it's Plus Highway, and they're using that data to provide it to road users, for example, we have to have a service level obligation, because obviously we can't be giving them some data sometimes and not other data, and having gaps in our data. So that's where we can also implement, because it's crowdsourced, we have a slightly more complex way of implementing it, because we have to make sure it's peer-to-peer, and we need to have that done on-chain, decentralized with smart contracts. So that's another area that we are unique on. Use cases. Use cases could be many. In fact, there are a lot of traditional ones, and I think there are a lot of new ones. Just talking to David about how you can have autonomous vehicles that use this data to plan routes, for example. They could use, there's so many other use cases, but that's coming back to the naming. Why we call it an oracle? It's because the future is machine-to-machine transactions, and machine-to-machine transactions need data to be able to do that. And that's where it comes in, that we're going to provide an oracle or a data source for those machines to make decisions, and AI is a driver for that. Other than that, it could be something like, the disaster management I've mentioned before. That's the other one. Smart cities. Smart cities use this kind of data for them to plan their own things, when street lights come on, when they don't. Say if it's in heavy rain, they'll need the street lights to come on because it's darker than it should be at, say, 3 in the afternoon, for example. Right? So yeah, looking at product market fit, there could be, this is just a couple of examples. So So first one is, what's his name? John. John is he's a hobbyist. He likes to tinker around with technology a bit like me, and he'll sign up and get a device just so that he can know the weather, because he wants to do some sport and he wants to have some idea of when it's going to rain, when it's not. If he's going to go hiking, he needs to know that that day it's not going to be raining. And the other, maybe that's the part I should be a bit clearer. So if you provide data, you can also see other people's data. So if you're hiking in a different location where there is another weather station, you can access that data because I'm also a data provider. Otherwise, I have to be a subscriber. That kind of model is where we are thinking that how it'll go. Right? So he also wants to know if his parents live in a place which has could have severe weather events. He wants to have a weather device at his parents' place so that he can monitor that as well. Right? That's sort of some of the use cases. Other ones could be like an enterprise company where they're in logistics. So logistics, they also need to plan their routes, and they need to have access to this kind of data to be able to make sure that their supply chain is running optimally. And going further, I'll give another example, which is industrial parks. Industrial parks need to have what they call a business continuity plan. Why they need that is because they have to protect their supply chain. So either goods coming in, if say, for example, that area around that park is prone to flooding, then they're going to have a problem getting their goods, then their raw materials in, and they're going to have a problem getting their their products out. So they typically have a BCP plan. Now, how to implement that BCP plan if you don't have data? That's really where there's a big use case. As I mentioned before, the Web3 part is a big part of the tooling because we automate a lot of the processes through code. And that's what decentralized is. It's cheaper to operate as well because we're having a lot more crowdsourcing of the data. We are also automating services, and we also make it financially sustainable. So I think this is the important part, which is the sustainable reward structure, right? So the first part is we have to incentivize the data providers by providing a fungible token. And we do that automatically. So the data that's collected, the decentralized system will issue a certain amount of tokens for every time the data is sent to us. So for example, if you're polling the data every 5 minutes and you're collecting that data, we will validate the data for quality. Not because it can't be just that we are getting data and that data has not been validated. There has to be a validation step before we reward that node with tokens. And this is a wallet-to-wallet transaction. We have a treasury wallet, and nodes have a wallet, and that transaction just happens machine to machine. The second part is where we have to go to enterprise customers and get get them to be customers that pay us money for this data, and then that can be on a subscription basis. It could be tiered, it could be customized according to whatever they need, and that funding will then allow us to do the next step, which is have this flywheel where we have supply of data on one side and demand on the other side, and we have this dynamic burning mechanism which allows us to issue tokens, which are inflationary, but we also burn tokens when we sell the data. And that allows us to control the inflationary aspect. And once we get to some sort of steady state, you will have a situation where more demand than supply of tokens, and the token price eventually appreciates. That's the flywheel effect that we're trying to create. Okay, so that's all the theory. This is actually what we've done and submitted. So the idea, you have an explorer. From the explorer, you can see all the different nodes, and from the nodes, you can check what are the parameters that you're looking for, and that. So this is all available. We are now we're trying to roll out the sensors and connect them back to the Explorer, and it'll be displayed in this manner. This is just for visualization purposes, but most probably people who use this data will use the API to use it. They're not going to look at it like this. This is some of the traction that we've had. As I mentioned to you, we had a problem in the beginning with poor data availability. We also have been speaking with NADMA and the Japanese agency regarding how we can use this for BCP usage. Central bank is also very supportive of us in terms of how we collect the data and be able to provide that data to industry. S&P Global is also in talks with us to see how we can provide them that data. But I think apart from the, of course, the enterprise and the sort of the monetization aspect, we also want to make this data useful in a public good sense, right? Because as I mentioned to you earlier, the starting point of all this was we wanted to have a national climate dashboard, and that climate dashboard would then help us to create awareness, help us to build, awareness is one thing, but definitely also give people the information they required to change behavior, and also for certain policy makers to be able to create the right policies. So we still want to do that as part of this project, and we're hoping that we can get government support to make this more available to the general public. Okay, from a strategic roadmap perspective, I've only talked about weather sensors, but this same model can be used for any other sensors. For example, we can use it for tracking GHG emissions. We can have a PICO satellite that is crowdsourced, that is first fractionally owned. So say nowadays a PICO satellite costs about $100 to $150,000. We can find 150 people putting in $1,000 each. We can launch a satellite, and that satellite can track GHG emission hotspots as well as carbon sinks, and plot that. So that it's, I mean, it's a bit of a little issue because it might be a bit of a name and shame kind of argument, because if you look at the carbon hotspot, I mean the emission hotspots, they may be, for example, a big factory. And someone's not going to be happy that he's been highlighted, but if we don't do it, someone else will. Actually, this data is already available, but it's a slightly old. It's available publicly, but it's maybe a year or two old. We'll be doing it in more real-time fashion. But I think it's something that is necessary, because if we keep allowing people to operate in this idea of utopia, or, well, we don't have the data to prove anything, then nothing changes. AI is a big aspect as well of what we're trying to do, because we've seen technology improve so much. Google DeepMind has issued, they have developed and open sourced their weather model called GraphCast, and it performs better than all the supercomputers that a lot of these government agencies use, and you can run that on your own laptop. So if that's the level of technology development, all you need is the data to be able to feed it into the model. And that's where we really feel that there's a great opportunity. Right. Thank you. What questions can I take? Yes. Yes, that's you. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's not yet been deployed. That's just a visualization. We have maybe one device that we're using for testing. We are in the process of working with contract manufacturers in China to produce devices that we will then offer to the public. Some of them are not. Those they are simulated devices. Simulated. Yeah. Sure. Yep. Mm. Right. Yep. Mm. We are only doing R&D on the sensors themselves. The platform itself is built and tested. The sensors means that maybe there are two parts to to the device, right? There's one is the module that's like a router that sends back the data to us. The second part is the sensors themselves. We are trying to be as agnostic as possible for the sensors. So, for example, if you're installing near a river because you're trying to track water level rise, then that sensor is very specific. If you are looking at weather is very generic in the sense that you have those five or six sensors that are tracking weather, and then if you're looking at GHG emission, it may be a separate sensor. So so it really depends on what your use case is. I mean, if you're saying it's islands and stuff, you may be looking at. Yeah, sure. Mm. Yeah, yeah, sure. Mm, mm, mm. Yep. Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. No, I, are you using sensors already? You have already got sensors. And how do you use those sensors? I mean, are they coming back to a central database? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm, mm. Right. Mm, mm. Right. Mm. Okay. So I mean, the first part of the issue is that you got sensors. The sensors are sending data to their own proprietary platform, call it that, and you can only they give you access to that data, but the data is stored by them. Yeah. Yeah, that's been a challenge for us as well when we talk to device manufacturers. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. But if you we speak to the what we've done, I just give you an experience for what we done. So when we talk to our contract manufacturers, basically the requirement is you must have a SDK. If you don't have a SDK, we're not interested. You give me an SDK, I don't care if you have some cloud platform that you're trying to charge um, a subscription for. We're not interested in that. But we'll buy the devices if you have an SDK so that we can extract that data ourselves and send it back to us. So in the same respect, in your use case, we tried. I mean, the first port of call is talk to the sensor manufacturers. Do you have an SDK? Can we use that SDK to collect the data directly, not go through the platform? If they say no, then you have to go through the platform. But I'm sure the reason that they are doing that is because they want to charge you a fee for that. Well, they want a subscription-based model. Mm. I mean, see, that's what we had initially envisaged, is that they'd use our devices, or at the very minimum, not the sensors, but at least the router part. Because the router part has some security features, it has the Web3 smart contracts built into it. It's an edge-based computing model, right? So at least if you have sensors, we connect it to our module, and then our module will send it back. That's the model of how, if you already have sensors. If you don't have sensors, is of course we supply the sensors and then it all works nicely. But if you already have your sensors, there's a little bit more complexity in terms of how can we connect those sensors to our module so that we can collect it. Okay. But I think this is infinitely doable. I think it's very, very encouraging, frankly, that you have already a lot of IoT sensors installed. That's really valuable in itself. Mm. Mm. Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I mean, getting everybody to work together is always been it becomes more challenging than the actual work itself, coordinating everybody. So yeah, but I think that the starting point is that if you have a mandate to do something, and you can move towards this, there's lots that can be done. I find that that's half the problem. The problem is that you don't have mandate, or you don't have cooperation, or you don't have something, then you can't do anything. Yeah, even if you have, even like, for example, we can say we got great solution, but you don't have a mandate. Where are we going to put this solution? Where do we get any value out of it? That's that, you know. Uh, I think that's where we have a good opportunity to collaborate. Anyone else? Questions? No? Yes, please. Hi, yes, I mean, it works like this. I mean, if it's just an ordinary citizen, right? It says, so we will have a crowd, we will have a, like, what do you call it, like a Kickstarter campaign, for example, where we take pre-sales. So we say, these are the devices, this is the price. You agree to pay to buy one. Then we will then send that device to you with the instructions of how to install it, where to install it, how to connect it up, how to connect to our system, and then once it's done, it's running. And then obviously we're providing support along the way to make sure that if you can't connect, or it's not appearing in our device, then we'll be troubleshooting you. Um, I want to, it sounds like something that we've developed uniquely. It's not. I can't take the credit in that respect, because the inspiration for this came from a project in the UK called Neuron. Neuron, their project was about decentralized physical infrastructure, but for drones. So their whole principle was, drones need very exact data to create highways in the sky. So to avoid collision and what have you, right? But they didn't know how to implement all these devices. So they actually came up with this model where they crowdsourced the data by giving everybody, or getting people to buy these antennas. And this data from the antennas is fed into what they call a unmanned traffic management system. And that then gets sold to people who run the drones, because right now, in the drone business, If you can't see that drone, you can't fly it. Right? Now that cuts a lot of the use cases out, right? You can't do all this autonomous drones doing deliveries and stuff, can't be done, right? So the whole idea of this project was to be able to bring to bear what they call beyond visual line of sight. And you could do beyond visual line of sight because you had this radar system that was designed for drones. But the data to do that came from these antennas, right? So that's how we got this idea that, and I bought a few of those antennas and installed them. So I went through the whole process of how does an individual like me get an antenna, install it, make sure it works, gets connected. I went through that entire process. So that's when I realized that, hey, if we can do that for these antennas, we can do it for any other physical infrastructure device, like climate sensors. That's how we went onto this. Right? The model is established. It's not me coming up with it. So yeah, if it gives you a bit more confidence that it happened, it's workable. And they installed. I think now they've installed 2,000 plus sensors across the world. So that's the other thing. It's like it's like me in Malaysia getting the delivery, going off onto my roof and installing it and connecting it and done, right? So it's infinitely doable in that sense that it doesn't require a lot of technical knowledge. Because I'm a lawyer, by the way. I know I talk a lot of tech, but I'm actually just a lawyer who likes tech. Sure. The tokens are there to incentivize participation, right? If you don't have the tokens, then people are just they're investing in this device, they're maintaining the device. After a year or something, they're just gonna leave it, and maybe not even a year. After 3 months, they're like, "There's no return to me. Why should I bother?" But if there's a penalty, call it a penalty. If I'm getting tokens and then I stop getting tokens because I unplug my device, then that's kind of a penalty, right? But the point being that the tokens must have a value, right? If you don't have a value to those tokens, then after a while they're also going to not be interested in it. So the flywheel has to come from the standpoint that you have to get that data and be able to sell it and earn money, and use that money to buy back the tokens, and therefore the tokens have a value. Well, I mean, in our model, we're talking about the node operators. But in what I think you're saying is that you have individuals that are going out into the field and doing some data collection, is it? Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. So you're getting the tokens, and then as we monetize those tokens, you get to be able to get cash for those tokens. That's the plan. Okay. But I think the other thing is I would ask you is that how do you incentivize your ground teams to give you accurate data and correct data? How do you do that? And how do you make sure that they do it? I understand. Okay, so I mean, I'm just trying to understand. But it's like If you give them a checklist, you say, okay, this is the data I want you to collect, right? Um, say one say okay. Mm. Uh-huh. Mm. Sure. But let me give you an example in parallel. There's something called phytosanitary. I don't know if you know it. It's a World Trade Organization certification. So basically, every product that's made out of plant material or biomass or biomaterial has to be certified before from the factory before it can be exported. It comes with a phytosanitary certificate. Okay. So there's something called a phytosanitary department in government who does the certification, a bit like Cerium, right? And they also need to go and visit the site, check if there's any insect infestation, whatever, whatever. When we were doing this project in Cambodia, the problem was the inspector never went to the factory. He's sitting in the coffee shop with the factory owner. He never goes to the factory at all. He's certifying the goods. How our job from UN was to build a system that I know the inspector is there. I know he has inspected the goods. I must have proof. Otherwise, cannot. So, you can give him all the devices, but does he actually use it? Does he make up the data? Does he use data from something else to substitute? Those are the questions. So unfortunately, I'm programmed a bit that way. I'm programmed in the way that how do I use the system to ensure compliance? You have, okay. GPS. Okay. So that you're taking care of. Okay, that's important because if you can do that level of compliance, then the data becomes exceedingly valuable because so many people don't do that, right? Right? So I had a similar conversation with a guy who had a team of guys. He has a team of call them technicians who go out and inspect towers. So some of the towers are out in the middle of nowhere, right? So how do you know that that guy went to the tower, checked the structure, made sure that everything was running? So he had a similar problem like that, and I think this is where we are trying to solve those kind of things using the machine to machine because I rather trust the machine than I can trust the human in a lot of ways. Not because it's fraud, it's also human error, mistake, those kind of things. Mm. Okay. But I think we should continue this conversation because I think there's a lot we can do together. And I'll be interested to do that. Are we on time? Oh, a little bit of time. Any more questions? No. It's open. The floor is open. Yeah, I think you are the one with the real use case. That's the difference. Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mm. Mm. Yeah. That is essential. But I think, yeah. So you think is, I mean, we also, I've been doing some work with this company called Carbon Space. I don't know if you heard about them. Yeah, they basically only look at carbon sequestration through the carbon flux. So whether it's forestry, whether it's oil palm or palm oil, or whether it's mangrove, they basically calculate the using satellite data, calculate the amount of sequestration. But to do that, they also have to calculate tree cover, biomass, below soil. All, I mean, I don't understand it. I'm not a scientist, but that's what they do. And that's why I say, even though there's a lot of these new technologies available, and we're actually working with them to use their data into the system as well, to help them to monetize their data, because they got data going back to 2003. So that's the ability. They can tell you for this particular area, this was the sequestration values, and then now 20 years later, what is it? And so you can create baselines, you can create studies, you can do all kinds of things. But mainly meant for what do you call it? Monitoring, reporting, and verification for carbon credit or carbon debit type situations. I mean, that's another area, in the sense that there's you can look at how you do that. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Right, right. And I mean, is it because the site is so big? Is Do you have challenges in even installing and maintaining the sensors? I can imagine. Oh, really? Wow. Okay, fantastic. You guys are really way advanced then. We should know more about you. I think that's yeah. Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think I'd definitely like to learn more about what you guys are doing and what challenges you have that we may have a solution for. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide solutions to real world use cases. So I'm, ever happy to hear real world problems so that I can see how to design solutions for them. Otherwise, I'm sitting in my room designing stuff which may or may not have a use case. Or maybe nobody wants it at all, and it's just wasting my time. Okay. Well, thank you all again. I hope it's interesting. Oh, sorry. Uh, Go ahead. Mm. Yes, you can. That's what I mentioned. You can use, as I said, pico satellites. You can see deforestation better. Um, the guys I mentioned, Carbon Space, they focus on this specifically for palm oil companies. Yeah, because they want. Basically, the principle is that you must use sustainable farming practices to be able to export to, for example, EU, right? It's because of the EUDR regulations. So they focus on this as a way to make sure that palm oil exporters in Malaysia can provide some sort of traceability to the buyers. So, for example, if your buyer is Ferrero Rocher, Ferrero or something, who's buying palm oil, they need to know it's coming from a sustainable farming initiative. So how do you do that, right? Of course, the problem starts with the fact is, where did you get your FFB from? Because if you're the mill and you got it from, how do you prove that you got it from your plantation, or did it actually come from some smallholder down the road? That's where the traceability comes in. That has a different use case. That traceability solution, we are talking to a company called Farzati in Italy. They do it for olive oil. So they can, from the molecular structure of the olive oil, they can tell you that which farms it has come from. So basically it works like this. So you know all the farms that you're supposed to get from, and they have that molecular structure. The minute that FFB comes into the mill, they scan each. They have these big scanners, and if anything doesn't fit the profile of it coming from one of your what do you call it, certified farms, and therefore it's coming from some it's like a contamination, they will flag it. And then you use that data, put it on chain, and then you give that access to your buyer, so that the traceability is very clear. And the idea is that if your traceability is good, you are able to charge more for your palm oil, because they're willing to pay, some customers in Europe especially are willing to pay for that premium. So maybe $100 more a ton or something, because I can give you the whole supply chain traceability and with a certification. So that's a different type of solution, but also I've worked on that as well. The one that we did for olive oil, they're trying to bring it here for palm oil. Yeah. Yeah, it's all, I don't understand it myself, but they have devices. I mean, they use it even for tomatoes. You know, for example, you get tomatoes from Italy. These guys are very Italian-centric. So the Italian tomatoes versus Chinese tomatoes, then they say, oh, you're selling Chinese tomatoes as Italian tomatoes. It's like substitution and then charging bigger price. So these guys developed it so that you can actually, the supermarket can know, or even the buyer can know whether it's a tomato from Italy or tomato from China. That's their whole premise. But they only work on biomass. So it's either bioplastics or food, what they call food, what do they call it? It's foods like substitution, where you use one product and sell it as a different product, and none of us know the difference, right? You say this tomato came from Italy, I believe you. So this is ability to have traceability. And so how did this work, right? You can put, I don't know, the technical part of it is that everything that you put on chain can be encrypted, because you're using a key or private key to do it. All blockchain uses a private key infrastructure. So you can put it there and it can be public. You can put it there and you can encrypt it. If you encrypt it, only someone you give the key to can unencrypt it. So there are many ways that you can, even though it's in a public chain, you can protect the privacy of it. So like, for example, I do identity. I told you all foreign students in Malaysia have an identity card, iCard. That iCard we've also converted into a digital document that's stored on chain. Now, PII means personal identifiable information cannot be just put on chain. So we encrypt it. But For example, if enforcement police want to access their data, they can, because we've given them the key. Right? So there are ways and means. But I think your use case is more designed for your particular plantation and what we can do there. I'm not sure about the crowdsourced data. Huh? Yeah, I'm just not sure. Because like, if you, for example, install the flux tower in your plantation because you wanted to show sequestration values. But as part of that, you wanted to sell that data to provide that data back to us. You could do that. You can use it for your own purpose and also give us the data for us to use, so you get, it's two use. It becomes used in two different ways. Okay. We should connect as well after this. Okay. Right. I think my time is done. The next presenters, you're on. No, I think. Are there any more questions? One more? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.